Husband's been secretly planning a new life with a woman has been meeting in secret hotels, and if that sounds melodramatic, I promise the first clue didn't come with thunder or lipstick on a collar. It came as a hotel folio folded into the sleeve of his blue blazer, the one he wears to client dinners, and I'm Naya, 33. A speech therapist who spends her days coaxing small brave syllables out of shy mouths and teaching anxious adults that their voices aren't dangerous, which is hilarious because I ignored my own for months, and the night I found the folio I wasn't snooping, I was doing what I always do, rescuing receipts from pockets before they fossilize in the wash. I felt the paper edge and thought it would be the usual petrol or parking, and then the logo glinted, Halcyon House, that boutique hotel near the airport with the eucalyptus candles and the lobby that looks like a soft apology. The line items looked like a date written by an accountant. King Suite, late checkout, champagne for two, room service at midnight, saffron risotto, he hates saffron, and a name under guest that wasn't mine, S. Rhodes. In the memo field, a typed note, as requested, no paper mail. Funny how that failed. I sat on the end of the bed with the folio on my knees like a child holding a book she isn't old enough to read. People think discovery is an explosion. Sometimes it's a small rearrangement of furniture inside your chest. I stared at the clock, at the laundry basket, at the plant in the corner that always leans toward the window no matter where I turn it, and I thought about vowels because that's where my head goes when it's scared. The way open sounds live in your mouth wider than closed ones, how saying no can be a door and an echo at the same time. I didn't rehearse a confrontation. I folded the paper back into the blazer and put the blazer on its hanger, and I made us both toast, which is a ridiculous ritual for the moment your life tilts, but butter is a language I'm fluent in. Client dinner went late, he said, easing into a chair like he needed forgiveness from the chair. We sealed the deal. He kissed my forehead and tasted like mint and the kind of wine you order when someone else is paying. I asked because I wanted to hear the lie in the air. Which client? He named the one who always says irregardless, and I smiled like a woman listening to a bedtime story she knows by heart. He ate the toast. I watched him like an archaeologist watches a shard become a jar. The next week I found a second receipt in a trouser pocket. Riverlight Suites, different suburb, almost the same script. Same memo, no paper mail. A handwritten edition, key left at concierge under S. 2 visits in 6 weeks. He had been making a small city inside our city, one that didn't require me to carry a map. I'm not dramatic, I'm methodical. At work, my job is to track the muscles of the mouth to see what's tense, what's lazy, what needs coaxing. At home, I made a list on my phone while he showered, a list of quiet facts. Halcyon, 2 nights, Riverlight, 1 night, S. Rhodes, saffron risotto, champagne for 2. I added the dates and noticed how they avoided birthdays and anniversaries, like politeness could be a kind of morality. Before I said anything, I did what my clients do when they're scared of their own sound. I practiced. In the car between sessions, I said sentences out loud. Who is S. Rhodes? How long? Are you leaving or building a parachute? I listened to how each question sat in my mouth. I swallowed the ones that tasted like performance. I kept the ones that felt like they could stand in a room without props. He is Armin, 35, an urban planner whose browser history is parks and pedal-only streets and documentaries about cities that forgive mistakes. He wears those brown shoes with the soft toe and calls it a win when a cul-de-sac gets turned into a little square. If you'd asked me 6 months ago what he plans, I would have said walkable futures. I would not have said a life I am not invited to. He is gentle with old people, tender with buses, a man with the kind of laugh that makes you forgive the price of cherries. He is also, it turns out, a person who can make check-in feel like a philosophy. The first time I spoke, I chose Saturday morning because Saturday is honest daylight. I put 2 mugs on the table and the receipts between them like sad coasters. He came into the kitchen sleepy, handsome, unprepared to be a witness. He saw the paper and paused before his face remembered how to be his face. What's this? He asked, and I said, practice saying the true thing. He looked at the logo like it would argue for him. Then he Saturday. He covered his eyes briefly with his hands, and I was struck by how small that gesture makes even big people look, like a child playing hide-and-seek with shame. There's always a first lie that sounds like a paper fan, work. I let it flutter and fall. There's the second lie that tries to be noble, I didn't want to hurt you. I said you did. You are. Say it in active voice. He swallowed. I am hurting you, he said. He waits his sentences when I ask him to. It's one of the reasons I married him. Who is S. Rhodes? I asked. Someone I met at a transport forum, he said, and the word someone made me want to throw something. Say her name, I said. Sarah, he said, and there it was, a shape in the room. He told me the cleanest version he could stand. They met at a panel about train stations that double as community hubs. She asked a question about desire paths, those dirt lines people make when the pavement is wrong, and later they had coffee that turned into dinner that turned into we should talk somewhere no one knows us, which is one of those sentences that should come with flashing hazard lights. They booked a small, neutral room to talk. We mostly talk, he said, which is a cruel sentence to say to a speech therapist. And the planning? I asked. He blinked. He did not ask me how I knew there was a planning. We looked at rentals near the river, he said. We imagined a place with a big table for friends and a balcony with herbs. He looked away when he said herbs because we have that balcony, those herbs, that table. He said the word imagined like confession and also like a drug. Are you leaving? I asked. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the receipts. I don't know, he said, and I said, you are planning to leave. Planning is leaving with better stationery. He cried, a quiet weeping that made me feel both violent and holy. I did not touch him. There are kinds of comfort that spoil evidence. I called my sister Layla because she is the closest thing I have to a woman who can build stairs in a burning house. She listened and didn't interrupt except to say breathe when my words started to bunch. She said, you need a witness who loves you and a list sharper than your rage. We drove to the car wash because I can only talk about disaster inside motion. She parked. She put a pen in my hand. What do you need to know? She asked. I wrote how long. Who pays? What promises? Is she married? Did he move money? Did he pack a bag in his head? Do I want him back as he is or as someone who chooses me like a difficult sentence? At home, I asked my list out loud while he washed dishes like a penance. How long? 7 months, he said, then corrected himself to 6.5 as if math is mercy. Who pays? Each paid their share except the hotels, which he paid. What promises? Words like someday and freedom and deserving, which are not promises so much as vitamins for fantasy. Is she married? No. Did he move money? He had opened a separate account labeled travel. Ridiculous. He'd siphon little bits from his freelance consulting checks, not from our home account, which does not make it better, only tidier. Did he pack a bag in his head? Yes. 2 duffels, a crate of books, the cast iron pan we fight over because my grandmother bequeathed it to me and he says it belongs to whoever loves eggs more. He looked so ashamed saying it that I wanted simultaneously to press his head to my chest and to slide the receipts under his eyelids so he couldn't look away. I have 3 rules at work. We describe the sound we hear, we don't insult the mouth making it, and we try again. I tried to put those rules on my marriage like gauze. Here's the sound I hear, I said. You are a man who likes making maps, and you made one without me, and you told yourself the path was unavoidable because your feet had already walked it in your head. I am not insulting your mouth when I say this. You behaved like a coward in soft shoes. He nodded because he is not an idiot, and because he knows what cowardice tastes like when you break it on your teeth. Do you want to do this with me? I asked. This meant the terrible middle, counseling unglamorous truth, returning the keys to rooms we haven't paid for yet with our future. Yes, he said. And do you want to do this with me enough to tell her right now in front of me that the planning stops and the hotels are over? He swallowed. Yes, he said again, and if you're waiting for me to say that made me feel better, it made me feel like a person who had found the emergency exit and was now reading the fine print. He wrote to her at the table. He didn't text. He opened his laptop like a person opening a window in a house that smells of smoke. He typed, I lied to my wife and to myself. I am ending this. I have been meeting you in rooms that didn't belong to me. I have been planning a life with you while one I promised already exists. I am not contacting you again. He read it out loud. The words looked small on the screen, and I wondered how such little things can move furniture. He hit send. He didn't flinch when the whoosh happened, which is either bravery or shock. We went to counseling, the kind with tissues that feel like sandpaper and a chair that makes you wonder if they choose discomfort on purpose. The therapist asked him to draw the floor plan of the life he had imagined with Sarah and the one he has with me. He drew 2 boxes and said, "This one has more light," and I said, "That's because you refuse to change the bulbs here," and it was petty but also true. The therapist didn't smile because she is paid not to. She asked him what problem Sarah solved in him that he was too ashamed to bring me. He said, "I wanted to feel like the man who arrived instead of the man who maintains." I said, "I wanted to feel like the woman who was asked for, not the woman who is asked from," and the room went very quiet in the way a room goes quiet when someone finally names the weather. In the weeks after, I learned the practical things people don't write poems about. I learned to put a freeze on the new account and to ask the hotel to delete stored cards. I learned to stop watching his face like it was a seismograph. I learned that grief makes me bake and that our neighbors will always accept cinnamon rolls even when they don't understand why I look like I've been crying near flour. He learned to sit in a room long enough for the air to tell him what it's doing. He learned that apologies are verbs or they're sugar. He learned that saying "I want to hide" out loud is magic, it makes hiding shrink. He stopped carrying his toothbrush in his backpack just in case he stayed late at the office. I had not known he'd started doing that until he confessed it, and something in me sat down with tiredness in its lap. A month after the receipts, I found an email that he had CC'd me on to his boss, recusing himself from a project that would have required trips to the very conference hotel where they had met. He hadn't asked me if he should. He had done it because it was the right scale of sacrifice, big enough to bruise, small enough to heal. He started coming to my Saturday morning clinic sometimes to help rearrange chairs before the kids arrived, and to hear the miracle of a 4-year-old finally saying S without turning it to TH. He would sit in the corner and cry without making a sound, because witnessing someone push air into shape is worship. I began to fall a little in love with him again in those corners, not because he was redeemed, but because he wanted to be useful in rooms that were not designed for his escape. You allowed to ask me if I stayed because I'm afraid to be alone. I am not. I am fluent in alone. I like my own company. I like going to the cinema with a book in my bag like a scandal. I stayed because the part of me that lives on the practical end of a miracle wanted to see if we could build a life sturdy enough to contain the worst version of us without turning the whole house into a museum of harm. I told him that staying was not unconditional. I wrote actual conditions on a piece of paper and stuck it to the fridge like a child's artwork. No more secret rooms. If you think a sentence you want to say needs a hotel room, it needs a therapist's office. If you feel arriving is a drug you miss, say so before you book anything more complicated than a coffee. If you want to leave, speak it in active voice and pack in daylight. He told me he had blocked her, and then he showed me, not so I could be a warden but so he could be the proof. He deleted the hotel apps and sent me the deletion confirmation as if he were returning a set of keys. He asked me one day, terrified and polite, if we could go to a hotel together for one night in our own city, with money from our account and bags we packed in front of each other, to rewrite the story of a lobby. I said yes on the condition that we bring our ridiculous slippers from home and our ugly pajamas, and that we order the thing he would never order with her, shepherd's pie, and that we turn on the lamp he would have kept off with her. We did all those things. The room felt ordinary in the best way. He cried again, then laughed, then fell asleep like a human being who had spent months sprinting in place. There were setbacks that were not cinematic. I found a photo on his cloud a few months later from that first hotel of a skyline that looked like any skyline, and I forgot for a minute how to find my own kitchen. I walked around the block 3 times until my lungs remembered the choreography of breath. I came back and said, "I am jealous of every lamppost," and he said, "Me too," which made me laugh in a way that uncrossed something in my chest. We started counting wins not in absolutes but ratios. The ratio of days we spoke before midnight to days we didn't. The ratio of times he told me a thought while it was still ugly to times he tried to make it pretty fast. The ratio of times I reached for sarcasm and chose a question. "You want to know about Sarah?" "I don't know much." She wrote twice after he ended it, one email beginning with "This isn't fair," and another that said "I wish you courage," which I appreciated in a distant structural way. Then she left our story as she must. I saw her once on a tram. She was reading a book and holding the pole with a hand that looked like it had been choosing itself for a while. I got off 2 stops early, not out of fear, but because I didn't need our faces to become a scene. She exists. That's all. Not as a villain in my fairy tale, not as a saint in his myth. As a person who wanted a certain light and walked toward it. We all do foolish things in the direction of light. There are days I still want the old magic trick where people promise forever like it's a single door you close once. What we have is stranger and more domestic, a hallway with many doors, some we keep open, some we lock and throw the key into an ugly pond, some we stand in and argue about thresholds. When my clients stutter, I tell them the mouth sometimes tries to protect the heart from the truth. Say it anyway, I say. Your tongue is strong. My marriage has become the patient I see for a double session. We practice hard words. We slow down. We give praise for ugly tries. We rest. If you are here because you found a room key in a jacket that shouldn't have had one, I don't have a script that will save you. I have a stool to sit on, a glass of water, a question. What do you need to know to make a decision you can live with in the morning? Ask for receipts. Ask for verbs. Ask for the version of them that can stay in a room. If they can't, and if you need to leave, summon your strength and your friends in your noon hour and go, with your name intact and your phone charged and your pantry stocked at your new place with at least one ridiculous jam. If you stay, don't do it as a statue. Do it as a person with a list and a boundary that is not a wall but a well-lit fence with a gate only your consent opens. Late last week, I sat with a teenage boy trying to say, ah. He'd learned to fake it for years by avoiding words that needed it. He would say bog for brogue and heim for chairman, and he had grown into a man-child who was masterful at substitution. We practiced in front of the cracked mirror I keep for exactly this. We watched our mouths do the work we didn't want them to do. Again, I said. Again. He got it on the 16th try, and he looked at me like I had put the moon into his throat. I went home and told Armin about it, and he listened with his whole face, and he said, I am learning to say responsibility without making it sound like romance, and I kissed him then, not out of forgiveness earned or forgetting accomplished, but because I liked the way that sentence sat in the room. Tonight we are chopping onions. He is wearing the soft brown shoes. I am humming a vowel exercise under my breath like a spell. The plant is leaning toward the window because light is a habit it refuses to break. We are planning nothing more glamorous than a weekend with my sister's kids and a morning at the market where the man sells peaches by saying he wants us to be happy. I am happy in a complicated way that would make the hotel brochures weep. He hands me the salt and I take it and I say thank you like a person who hears her own voice, and he says you're welcome like a man who remembers that welcome is a word for doorways you don't run through. We eat. We clear. We sit on the back steps and insult the possum that steals our tomatoes and then admire it for its stubbornness. The receipts live in a folder marked evidence, and the folder lives in a drawer that is neither shrine nor trash. The key cards are gone. The map he drew in his head has faded in places where we drew a different road on top, the way children draw suns on the corners of their paper even when the scene is indoors, because sometimes you need the idea of light where there wasn't any. I don't know what our story looks like at the age where people start wearing compression socks to fly. I know what it looks like tonight: one house, same herbs, 2 people who planned a new life once and then planned another new life instead, the kind you build in your own kitchen with the lights on and the doors open and the knowledge that you are not safer in secret rooms, you are just briefly quieter there. I choose noisy. I choose the sound of a human saying the true thing in a voice that shakes and then doesn't. I choose the visible map, the hours of daylight, the work that tastes like salt and sweetness and sometimes metal, the way every "we" has to be pronounced on purpose, like a word you could almost lose if you stopped shaping it with your whole mouth.